Hey everybody, we are in chapter 3 of the episode 1 and we talk now about the fact of how to become a compliance officer. My name is Ralf Ebert, I'm your compliance coach. Stay tuned on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ask questions, and I try to come back as soon as I can. The third part, will talk about freely of my opinion about becoming a compliance officer, because the truth is that the compliance function has enormously changed over the last years and even over the last decade, and that is subject to a lot of elements. Number one is more regulations, meaning more need for compliance officers. Two is we had a lot of compliance topics in the financial industry. Think about sanction impact. Think about reputation, risk elements whenever a bank has seen some exposure to negative news. And last but not least, the impact, of course, of tools and technology in the world, meaning the artificial intelligence has, of course, an impact on the compliance function. We see more and more tools are coming up. I will do a whole episode, I think even a series on the elements of technology and artificial intelligence in the compliance field. So have a look on that element whenever you come back to this YouTube channel. Now, there are, I think, in essence, two elements that we need to take into consideration. Number one is what kind of hard skills you need to have and what kind of soft skills do you need. And I think, and that is as well being part of a big Sinek admirer, I think the second part, the emotional part, in terms of how you're passionate about a job is much more important. But don't forget the first one. And the first one, I just want to give one clear element. You can become at every stage in your career, wherever you are, the possibility to step into the banking and in particular the compliance world. And that is due to the very large nature of compliance function. So, of course, what is always of an importance, of an advantage, is a certain degree, university degree, that can come from legal, economics, over social and politics, of course, to have a first grounded approach in that. But you can start at a very early stage or even switch your career at a later stage whenever you think that is something that you could be interested in. How does that function? The essence is, of course, there is a lot of certification out there, and I will as well in one of the other episodes come to that, what kind of compliance certificates in an international as well European driven level are of an interest, and that could be really helping for you. But the truth is you need first of all to get around the term of compliance, what it's in for you and how you can position yourself. Now, it is always of an advantage if you have already a certain minimum knowledge of the financial industry. Now, it is as well to be clearly taken care of in which industry, in the financial industry, or which sector you are working in. Me, for instance, I'm in the wealth management for more than 15 years, and here the questions are much more sophisticated sometimes as you're working for a retail bank, for instance, where of course we have a more industrialized approach, and as well with regard to compliance. So that is a little bit of how do you feel about it, whether you see yourselves more over into an intervenient position or a case-driven element. So number one is, in the best case, you have already bachelor, master degree or university degree in the aforementioned sections. Two, if possible, and if you can already prepare yourself, whatever compliance programs there are out there, and you can obtain a certificate, that's an advantage. Personally speaking, I think languages are extremely important, because even from a cultural perspective, it permits you to understand where the client is coming from. I'll give you an example. In my teams, for instance, as in particular we're dealing a lot with international clients, it's always as an advantage having a Chinese-speaking compliance officer for Chinese-speaking clients. Same is for Russian market, for instance, because then you come a little bit a level deeper and you come from the resource perspective and source perspective to understand these elements, as well from the intercultural part. You come closer to the client and you can certainly better address them. So that's very important. University, certificate, language, and then we are coming already to the part of the skill sets which are moreover in the soft skills, and that is resistance, because you will have a lot of elements and tasks to deal with. And I think that as well is one of the most important parts that you should early in your career have a focus on. Do I want to be a subject matter expert? Meaning I am the one who is dealing, let me say, just with sanctions, with the politically exposed persons, for instance, or I'm the cross-border expert? Or are you more interested in terms of getting into a general role where you can all kinds of activities and all kind of questions can just land down every day on your desk? And that, I think, it's mostly related in terms of how you're operating. Are you operating moreover in an energetic environment, or are you moreover the kind of focused person who wants to have one task at one place? And that is completely important of where you go. Don't forget, that is my personal, I think, career and success element. I have always operated in teams and with teams, and the success and failure sometimes is as well then a team achievement. And so, especially in compliance, there are very interesting jobs when it comes to being a manager of a team. I will do a lot of episodes on this element as well, because it's part of the compliance culture. It's part of impacting the elements and how to think compliance a little bit differently. Now, there is, of course, an element of being stress resistant, because you will have to deal in a very high tensional part of the activity, because it's very often related to business driven decisions. It's very often related to profit. So you will need to deal with a lot of pressure from the what we call first line of defense business to hold the line and being a person of integrity. So it's a question of role model, of course. If you have a compliance officer who is always showing in the way that she or he deals with elements and with stakeholders the most proper way from a regulatory perspective, as well from a communication skills perspective, then your impact is certainly higher than if you have somebody who is not really taking care of these elements as it should be. So communication, very important point as well. I think in today's time, a compliance officer, and that was certainly different before, and we come to that as well in one of my other series, in the historical development and evolution of compliance, we have seen that need getting more and more important. So you should be capable of present yourself and being capable of present the case in different bodies, not only to your line manager or to your team, but even to and sometimes an audit committee, a board, a project management team, and so on. So if you feel sometimes bewildered or even not good positioned to deal with these kind of situations, then that's something that you can work on, that you even must work on if you want to get higher in the career ladder. What I personally have to say, and that's only in terms of concluding here on this very short episode of how to become a compliance officer, is that the compliance field gives you a large possibility to develop yourself at every time and to learn at every time. And I think that's the most funny and the most important part, that wherever you go, you have the possibility to develop. And I think, personally speaking, in a job, when you have the occasion of coming into a new job in a new field and to apply, let me say, the 50-50 or 60-40 rule, meaning 50 or 60% you bring already to the table with your skill set of your previous roles, but 40 to 50% are still in the learning curve, then it becomes interesting, because then you get as well being acknowledged for what you achieve, and of course you're a permanent learner. And permanent learning in the private field as well in the professional field was one of the most important quality factors and drivers to get really to deal with situations that you never dreamt beforehand. But that as well means that as a compliance officer, you need to be prepared that your daily job or your daily tasks will look differently the morning that you step in with regard what you have already foreseen in the evening. So I think that as well is you need to be always ensure that there can be an urgency coming in and to deal with that. And that I think it's the charming or as well the the most passionate way what we have seen in the compliance world. So if you do not fear these situations and have fun by learning and being surprised sometimes and develop new skills even in your daily jobs, I think the compliance function is into you. So to wrap it up again for you, and don't forget to come to my next episodes, which are moreover getting in detail on this topic, is I think it's very important that at every time and every stage in your career, you have the possibility to step into the compliance function. Of course, university and bachelor's and some master degrees are of an advantage. There is, of course, qualifications in the compliance field, I will talk about that later, are of an importance and sometimes an advantage. Language, for me, especially if you're working in the international field, is a must for the reasons that we have already talked about, especially on the intercultural part. But I think to really succeed in this role, the very important part is the kind of soft skills, resistance, having always this interest in learning permanently, and stepping into a new role all the time. And the wonderful thing is that in the compliance function, you can discover the whole organization nearly to its full extent, because you're confronted with all problems at every time. And I would like to conclude on a very interesting McKinsey research that has been done in 2023, and which came even to the conclusion that sometimes a performant compliance function can be a competitive advantage. Don't get me wrong, I don't want now to sell compliance as part of the business model, but I think it's very important to know that compliance as well in its setup and role can contribute enormously to the benefit of the company. Because if your compliance framework is working and you avoid major incidents, I can tell you clients will certainly take that into consideration for the choice of the banking for the bank that they're going with. Why? Because everybody wants to avoid reputational elements. Everybody wants to avoid that your name or the name of the bank is in major media outlets presented in a negative context. So I think that in terms of the client journey, for instance, as well, that clients love when the onboarding of a client goes smoothly, and even the whole machinery which is behind it, it's not so seen and felt at every moment. I think that's a big advantage. So here I think as well it's one of the transformation elements of compliance, that it's more and more intertwined with the business activity, and of course the success of a bank can be measured as well within the compliance function. And I think that if you're already an expert in compliance and you're looking forward in how to evolve, I will as well talk about one element which I think is very important. How can we measure the impact of compliance? Meaning in terms of being more transparent, in terms of being more competitive, what are the indicators, and how can I evolve that? And I think that is as well something that will take the compliance function to the next level. So I hope I have raised a little bit your interest. Please stay on tune with this channel. Subscribe to it so that you don't miss the next episode. And in particular, if you have any comments, let me know so I can interact and even provide you with a specific episode on a topic that you would like to see. So again, this channel is for all kind of compliance elements related, from a compliance coach and an expert to expert and beginners. See you soon. See compliance differently.